Yeah, on the computer. So hey, welcome everybody. This is is this week 5 now? Or is this week 6? Like, I lose count. 5 or 6? Do we even know?
I'm not sure. I lose track of time.
We just keep going at it. So welcome to this week, and thank you again for all the hard work. I know there's been a lot of activity. I think Scott was helping a lot with some bugs and things like that. So thank you again for. Yes, Stacy's like, oh, is that Stacy? Oh no, that's Scott. I was just trying to figure it out. I think, yeah. So yeah, thank you again for all the hard work, and I think we can just as usual, we know how this works. We have our demos, and then this time we're doing a learning module that I'm going to be presenting on communication for developers, and then we're going to go through the next issues, which I'm also going to be running. And I know Stacy also is doing office hours this week, so I don't know if she will have an update for us towards the end of the meeting about it.
I don't have them set right now, but I kind of want to do just what I did last time, where checking in with you guys to see what will work best for you.
Be available with you. So I'll post a thread again to see when it would work best, and I'll try and schedule it around you.
That sounds good. All right, so yeah, we'll do it on demand. So that sounds like that's what works the best, right? So anyway, let's go with demos. So Scott, let's go with demos.
All right. How did it go this week? How did everybody feel?
Personally, I thought our task looked like was going to be super difficult, but as we started breaking it down, we're like, oh, that's not so bad. We can totally do this.
Nice.
Yeah, same. I was like, ooh, I wonder how we're going to do this. And then we pretty much got it done pretty quickly. But I feel like that bug was definitely something that was challenging us. So I'm glad we solved that all together.
Yeah, and that's definitely something I would love to know more about. Yeah, exactly. Stacy is also saying in the chat, let's know, because, Stacy and I were definitely a little bit out of that, what happened there. So we would love to know a bit more, like, well, what happened? What was the problem?
Well, the thing with the bug, and I mean, me and Leah, we were kind of going over it again before the call, but I don't know. I guess it wasn't so much of a bug, really. It was just more so something that we may have left out, because we were just trying to recreate it, or I think Leah did recreate the bug, because while we were just practicing our little demo before the call, there was no bug from where we thought it was supposed to be.
Huh. And so what was the behavior that you noticed? Like, what was the odd thing that was like, this is not fine?
Originally, the bug was basically, it created an infinite loop.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So that basically affected, the functionality on the page.
Mm-hmm.
But just like last night, when we were in office hours with Scott,
mm-hmm.
There was one particular moment, and unfortunately I was in and out, but there was one particular moment when we got a specific error message, and essentially we came up with a fix for it by including just an if statement. But earlier on today, me and Leah, we were just going over some things, and we removed that if statement, and there was no bug. So,
oops.
No, the bug definitely existed. It's just that we don't need the if statement in the bug fix. It's not that the removing the if statement solved the bug. It's not like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Interesting. So there was something else that you did that fixed that infinite loop happening, or maybe not.
We did a combination of things. So, for example, the way that we have set up the providers, we also moved that around. Mm-hmm. So we had a token provider where we put it outside, where the items provider are inside, and we were trying to access the token directly from local storage. Instead, we also switch it so that we can consume the token from the token provider. So we did switch a few things, and it worked.
Okay.
So it could have been any of those.
All right.
Right.
So it sounds like context, infinite loop, local storage. That sounds like, yeah, likely culprits. Yep. Yeah, Scott, did you have any insight on what you think happened on there?
Am I muted?
No, you will.
Okay. So it looked like we were listening to the token in a use effects hook, but the token that we were listening to was static. It was just pulled from local storage, and there it sat. And so we were expecting when a user comes to the app without having a token, and they join a list that should already be there, that token is not being updated, and so the list wouldn't re-render. And so Leah figured out, she figured that out, and so she used their use token hook to get that token to be dynamic, so it would update. The first time we did that, we got an error where, because that token's used, it's sent to Firebase search for that token, but it was null, and so initially, and so it caused an error. And then Mabel came back with wrapping that in an if statement, so it wouldn't trigger that unless there was actually a token there, and that's easy to fix it. I'm not sure what Fabrice and Leah just discovered before this call, though. Let's know what that is.
Because during the prep demo, I realized the reason why we saw that, the Firestore, where requires a valid argument error, it's actually because we use the undefined token. So the token value was undefined, but the token we got from the use token hook was actually null. So null is considered a valid argument. Do I sound insane?
No. That is not you. That's insane. That's JavaScript. Undefined and null are very different in JavaScript world, and so that can create some weirdness for sure. And so it sounds like it might be Firebase that might have its own behavior based on if it's null or if it's undefined.
So I think during the bug fix yesterday, the bug was somehow undefined at some point. So we saw that error, and we thought adding the if statement could help us bypass the error. And today I removed it, and it worked out fine because the token initially was null, not undefined.
Okay.
Well, I don't. Leanne, did you want to say something? I thought you were gonna start, and so I didn't want to interrupt you. Well, okay. I'm really happy that you all worked together to see what was going on, and so right now it sounds like it's fixed. So fingers crossed. Worst case scenario, it could be a good idea to maybe document the bug so that if it surfaces again in the future, we remember what it's about, and so kind of have more cards that use that exploration that you did to maybe be like, okay, this is happening again, so this is not fixed. So because that can happen too. Like sometimes we think things are fine, but they're not. So anyway, but I'm really happy. My takeaway from this is that you all work together very hard to fix that. So that's really awesome. And so thank you so much. So yeah, let's go to the demos.
Yeah. Who wants to jump on that?
We can go first since we were talking about the bug and stuff. Okay. So for the most part, our functionality, our user story was mainly about filtering the list for the user. So for example, the user is going to come into the input box. They already have their list, and by typing in just a few letters from one of the items in their list, it's supposed to narrow down the list for them to basically highlight a particular item. So if you want to try that out, Leah, with Kato or AM, see. And also, as the user is typing, there's an X that appears that allows them to be able to clear basically the input and basically start over if they need to, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, let's take a look at the code now.
Can you see my code editor?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think we see only your browser. You might need to reshare, probably.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Cool. So the main functionality comes from the list component. If you scroll up, Leah, just so that they can see some of the differences that so basically to get the items list, we use the use context. And for our use state, we set search term and set term, filtered items and set filtered items. And essentially, as the user is typing inside of the input box, we have a handle search function that essentially is going to grab what they're typing and check and see if certain letters are included in the list. And basically, it's going to return that filtered list based off of what's included by the user from what they type in. And if you scroll down a little bit more, as far as the input, the main thing we did there essentially was change the type from text to search, which essentially that's what generates the X, which is pretty cool to see actually. And essentially we have the on change handler here. The handle search function is running basically as they type in. And we're checking to see is the filtered items or the length of the list empty or not. If it is, turns out that it is empty, it's still going to generate that warning message. And if it's not empty, then it's going to generate essentially the list items for the user based off of filtered items. That's for the most part pretty much it.
Yeah.
Amazing work, everyone. This looks so good.
Yeah, nice. Looks like it was a pretty simple work for you. So that's pretty nice that it went so well. And yeah, good job on finding the search input type. That's a nice one. And
yeah, we have found that one, and we were both very surprised to see like that was it, because was definitely not expecting it to be that portion at least to be that simple.
Yeah, the nice thing about this field is that essentially what happens is that by saying that, oh, this input is search input, then the browser of the user is going to be able to handle this. And so it could also add maybe some autocomplete stuff as well, depending on the browser. So it's a nice thing like to remember that, you know, there's all these HTML tags and also attributes that browsers are going to parse and interpret in ways to make the user's life easier. So leveraging that just makes your work easier. So that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Scott, did you want to continue? Or was there any questions or comments in the end?
Could you, since you guys have the bug fix, could you go over that just to show everybody like what the bug fix was in the code? That's okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you, Leanne.
Oh, okay. So how do you share like a whole screen?
I think
it's desktop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, desktop. Sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. So you can also see my code editor.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we had an items in a dependency array, and it's causing like basically an infinite update. You can see that if I add like console log render, so you can see the console, it's like constantly updating. Can you see that?
Absolutely.
So it has to be removed. Otherwise, the user can't do anything on a page.
Mm-hmm.
So before the token was came from a local storage. Basically, the token comes from local storage get method. So the token was inside the dependency array, but the token is actually, like Scott said, it's static. It never gets updated. So which is why the database, like the get functionality never gets triggered when the user first joins an existing list. I think I should show you guys like what that means. So I think it's local storage. How do you get the?
I think
How do you get
item? It's .get and then item, like a capital I.
Oh yeah.
Get item?
No,
it's gonna be as Leanne is in local storage.get item, exactly.
Okay. So if we use token as it is, when the user joins an existing list, sorry, I need to use this one. It basically, the list comes back empty, so the user has to do a manual refresh to get the list. Right. So, like Scott said, it's because the token was static. It never gets updated. So the first read action, it never gets triggered. So we need to treat token as a dynamic value. Mm-hmm. So we decided to use token from the use token hook, because that's how we use token in a welcome component. That's how we just basically like treat token as a piece of state, and this way the token is updated from a null to a valid token. And so this time when you join a existing list, you don't have to do a manual refresh, and you get the latest item list. Nice. And Fabrice and I were like still confused about why we need the if statement. So yesterday we were like doing the bug fix. We decided to add this if statement to like avoid an error. I think it's because at some point the token was undefined, so we see this basically we see this we see this function query where requires a valid third argument, but it was undefined. But today, when Fabrice and I were prepping for the demo, we realized that the initial token value was actually null. So we don't have to use the if statement to bypass that error. So yeah, it's very confusing.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's I mean, I wonder if it might be worth digging a little deeper this week into this to get to the bottom of it. I mean, For me, the part that's very weird is that infinite loop. Like, why does items trigger an infinite loop? Because it sounds like there might be something in the code that is just setting items again and again and again and re-rendering. And that's something that I'm like, there might be something wrong somewhere.
Yeah, that's actually because they're on snapshot. It's going to re-render automatically, so that's when we include items. That's going to enter.
Yeah, that is probably why, actually. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I wonder if it would be worth meeting again this week to get to the bottom of this once and for all, and so that we can all understand what's really going on. How does that sound?
Yeah, we should definitely dig deeper into the issue.
Maybe leveraging that kind of office hour or have some sort of arranging a meeting at some point and get to the bottom of it once and for all. But if it works for now, that's great.
Yeah, I think we can just remove the if statement for now.
Okay.
Awesome, that's great.
Awesome, yeah, great work. I mean, that must have been nerve-wracking. So yeah, well done.
Yeah. Mabel, Leanne, do you want to show us your stuff?
Of course. So Mabel, if you can share your screen. All right. So as a user, whenever I click the check on one of the items, we're going to add a new property called next purchase. And it is going to have the value number of when the next purchase will be. So pineapple. And if we look, we will see it updated with 7, which is equal to the frequency. And then it also updates in our database. So if we go to our database and see that. Oh, it was there. Next purchase, yeah. So that is it. So the way we did that was if we go to the code, we have this new, we did a handle change. And so we have a variable called item selected, and it is going to filter through our items. And then ingredients is what we called it. And so it's going to return with that ID, and it's going always to be there an array of 1 item. So that's why in last purchase date, in the estimated function, or what's it called? Calculate estimate, it requires that the parameters be number, and sometimes last purchase date is null. So we did this conditional statement where, hey, if there is a last purchase in that item selected, set it as that. If not, set it as 0 to bypass that null. And so then we have calculate date, which we use the calculate estimate function. And that takes 3 different arguments. The parameters were last estimate, last interval, and number of purchase. So our last estimate is our last purchase date. The last interval is the frequency with that item that we selected. And then the number of purchase is 1. So there is that. And then we added it to our new data object. We created a new property called next purchase, which is equal to the calculate date. And we update our database with that. And yeah, that's it.
Y'all handled that ticket so well. People struggle generally with getting that script to work in the way that they want, or read too deeply into it and end up like just spiraling, trying to figure out how it actually works. So I love the way that you handled it. It's kind of like a testament to when you're working with third-party libraries out in the wild. It's like, don't worry so much about what they're doing behind the scenes, just worry about what they tell you to do. So great work.
A question I had is I can't remember if I don't remember if this is a part of this ticket or if it's something that happens later. Is I guess we sort of are trusting that calculate estimate function is going to handle like knowing how many times somebody's purchased something, so that it's constantly getting a closer match to how often somebody's purchasing, or how often they're purchasing an item. Yeah, I just can't remember if that's this ticket or if you guys played around with that to see if it changed depending on how often they bought it, or if that's not something we've gotten to yet.
I didn't see it on our ticket. I don't know if it's a future ticket. If you want to go to the estimates to see what like that function actually looks like, that's what it's doing.
Okay, yeah, so right now we've only got one purchase.
Mm-hmm.
So like we'd have to toy around with that number of purchases made to see if it's changing, if it's giving us on the item.
Yeah, that's what I thought, that just having that last parameter, that probably down the road will be adding number of like items that we buy, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and then at that point, I guess we'll have to connect it to make sure we're passing that in.
Yeah.
We can dig a little bit when we go over next week's issues to see if we see any issues like that.
Mm-hmm.
Very true.
Because we've like gone through several iterations of how these issues are laid out. So could be in there, could have been completely removed. I honestly don't know. So I'm eager to find out.
Yeah. Awesome. That looks great. Thank you. Smooth demo. So Eve, do you have anything more to say, or does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, if there's questions or comments. All right. Well, as always, great job. I know these PRs. I don't think they got to the mentor review part yet, right? So is that correct?
I left a review.
Okay.
Yeah, on both.
Okay, cool. So I guess nice. So I guess we can probably move along with these then. That's awesome. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much. Again, nice work. I like how the code is just very simple and lean. That's really cool. So anyway, we are gonna give you a little presentation today, and I guess I'm using the royal we all of a sudden, but it's a topic that's really dear to me. So I'm really happy to be giving you this presentation. And what I wanted to talk about, it really is, and I guess I'm just gonna go like this, so you can have a preview of what's coming along in the slides. So I'm not going into like the full presentation mode, but yeah, communication, especially communication, like as a developer or in when you're part of an engineering team, like what is it like? And I'll try to keep it short because we have. I want to make sure we're all on time. So would somebody give me a heads up when we reach 3:45 and kind of say, hey, Eve, it's time to stop. We have to talk about next issues. So who would like to do that? Who would like to just interrupt me very, very, very rudely and say, Eve, stop right now? Can I get a volunteer? It's a one-time opportunity. After that, you can't do it anymore.
I'll let you know in the chat.
Okay, Scott. All right, thanks. So so communication, and of course, I'm saying communication is a very dear topic of mine, and because the reason why I'm saying this is because communication really is key to a lot of things. When you are in a team environment, communication can make things so much smoother and so much easier, and also leverage a lot of like ambiguity and issues that might arise by simply talking about it. Then you might be able to solve a lot of problems. And being proactive about it is a good way to be. So for each of the three things that we're going to talk about in terms of communication, we have documentation, pull requests, and also comments in code. This is the three things that I wanted to focus on. And for each of these three things, I wanted to focus on three aspects of it, which is what is it, why it is important, and how do we do it. So for the what part, I wanted to kind of get a little bit of how you feel about the concept that we're talking about, like kind of like brainstorming, I guess. And so, when we're talking about documentation, like what comes to mind to you? Like, what do you think is documentation? Like if somebody was like, I don't know what documentation is, can you tell me what it is? Like, what would be your answer? And there's no wrong or right answer. I'm just curious to hear what you think.
I would describe it as a guide. So a document that kind of explains the rules of what you need to do, how to set it up. If it's good and very thorough documentation, they'll probably have examples as well. So something like that.
Nice. Yeah, so it's a guide. It tells you kind of like the rules of how to use that piece of software probably, and it has example. That's great. Any other input on this? That's a great definition of documentation. Anything else that you would expect out of documentation? All right, that's all good. I think we hit the important part. So to continue on this, so what is documentation? We go from why do we documentation, and so as Mabel said, like we have this guide, and this is kind of like how it ties into like, okay, you write documentation to remember how to do this thing again, because sometimes you write something and it's like, oh, how did I do this again? Because I think one of the important part in this communication piece and in documentation is like being mindful of the next developer. And so sometimes the next developer is somebody else, but sometimes it's you. So you worked on a project and then you kind of rushed on it and you did it and it works, that's fine. And then 6 months pass, and then 6 months afterwards, somebody tells you, hey, can you just add a feature to this? And you get back to it and you're just like, oh my God, what did I do? How does this work? I don't remember, because in 6 months you did so much. And so documentation is a great way to not have to go through that pain again of like, oh, how did I figure this out? Because it's written right there. And it's kind of like a note to yourself in lots of ways. And so this guide that you can write for others can also work for yourself. Also, another thing is that, when you write documentation, it helps you remember what you did. And so it kind of, it's part of a learning process as human being. By repeating something 1,000 times, we remember it better. And so writing documentation is also an exercise in this. Like when you internalize something, that's great, but then when you're able to write it down or explain it to somebody else, then you get even better at it. So this is another reason why documentation is such a great idea. Another thing is documentation can be a good tool for revisiting big decisions. And the way I kind of think of this is just kind of like, the way I think of it is maybe like, you don't have to get back into the nitty-gritty of how this thing works. When you have your documentation, you can have this kind of like overview, this kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Like the bigger picture of how this thing works. And so you don't necessarily have to go into the details of how it works. And so in that way, you can also look at, okay, are there patterns in the way this piece of software works, and you can make decisions based on what you see in your documentation. So this is maybe a little too vague, but this is how I understand this idea. Also onboarding, yes, and this is definitely, you know, first-hand experience for me. You know, there's been work experiences where I was the one who kind of wrote the documentation for everything, all the processes that a startup was using. And that was a tremendous tool because, you know, when we hired our first engineers that were, you know, entry-level engineers and didn't necessarily had the habit of like going deep into something and got to deal with it like 10,000 of bugs in their whole career. You know, having this onboarding part being facilitated by documentation is a great way to help people being kind of self-sufficient, because you tell them, hey, welcome, we're so happy to have you. I think you can spend some time reading how we do things, and then from there you're going to learn a lot on your own, you know, during these first few days at a new job. So documentation is a great tool for this. Another thing is also institutional knowledge is something that, and maybe you're not familiar with the term, but essentially the way I understand institutional knowledge is that, as I just said earlier, like, you know, I was talking about onboarding, is like, this is how we do things, quote unquote. And this can be challenged because, you know, the way a team does something might not be the right way to do it, but it's another whole different topic. But essentially, when you have this document where you say, okay, these are our processes, this is how we install this is how we use this API, then if somebody leaves the team, then this knowledge is still here for everybody. And so, you know, if you are this developer that is leaving and then the next developer comes, then they doesn't have this gap of knowledge, because the new developer is going to be able to kind of see this trace of what you did and understand how this works. So this is the way I understand how documentation can kind of help fill these gaps of, like, you know, sometimes people come and go and that's totally fine, but by having like this repository of knowledge, then this doesn't put the whole project or team in jeopardy when somebody leaves. And that also helps alleviate like the buzz factor. So I don't know if you're familiar with that notion of buzz factor, but it's the idea of, like, you know, what happens, and it's a very cruel thing, but like, what happens if one of your teammates is run over by a bus, you know? I know it's a terrible thing to say, but this is the idea of, like, you know, if this person had all the keys to the application, if they're the only one who knew how this application works, then you're really screwed, because you can't work anymore. You have to redo all the work they've done, or even worse, you might have to undo the work they've done to redo it again. And so by having this repository of knowledge in documentation, then you can avoid, you know, the team can continue to work even if somebody is sick or somebody is unavailable or somebody's leaving. You're still going to be able to function. And that's really why I believe documentation is a big deal. And the last point in this slide is the empowerment. And so I touched a little bit of this in the onboarding part, but it's essentially the idea of, like, if you have a document that you can look at to understand how things work, then you can be self-sufficient, and it's self-serve as well. So you don't have to tap on your teammate's shoulder every 5 minutes and say, hey, can you explain to me how this works? You know, you can just go to the documentation piece and understand by yourself how this works. And so that in that way, you can free up time of your teammates, which is very valuable for them to do their work. And then you have the keys to do your own work. And so that's another way I see is documentation of, like, self-serve and so empowering. So that's kind of the why on documentation. And I guess I put a lot of time on this particular slide because I really think this is the most important one. Like, you know, documentation is something that is so easy to neglect, but there is so much good things that come out of writing a solid documentation that goes beyond just like now, but like by running documentation, you're really preparing for the future. And so that's really what it is about. So how is kind of that last part. So I guess, if you're tasked with writing documentation, how can you go about it? Then the best way is to think of like, okay, how can I explain this to somebody who is completely new to the team, who has no idea how this works? And so this is probably the best way to write something that's going to be solid and work for most cases and be useful. Also, in terms of formatting, and I know I have the tendency myself to be very verbose and write sentences and like it's novel, and it might be useful to have like a too long didn't read section where in like a few sentences you just summarize, this is how it works. And then if you want to provide more details, you can probably do that in a separate section or something like that. And a good example of good documentation is probably the React Router guide, like reference. So I encourage you to take a look. I mean, I'm sure you probably have since you've implemented React Router in the application. But this is a good example. And as Mabel said, there is definitely examples and there's guidelines and all of this. So this is definitely a good example. So the second part is pull request. In terms of what is a pull request, I guess, we don't have to talk about it. We all know what a pull request is, right? It's essentially, and this is a term that's specific to GitHub. Like if you're using GitLab calls it merge request, but it's the same idea. And the idea is you have a repo and you have two branches and you want to merge one branch into the other one. That's what a pull request is. And so why is it good to put your attention on pull requests? Well, as you know, and because you've been opening a ton of pull requests and you've been writing descriptions and providing comments, that there's a lot of value into that pull request where you can have this conversation and there's a lot of context that you can provide to your reviewer, like by writing a good description and then you're asking somebody, a teammate, to say, hey, can you review this code? Like the more details you put in your description, the more your teammate who's reviewing your code is going to be able to understand, okay, that's why they're doing this. And so that provides a lot of tools to provide you the best feedback. So by writing a good description of your pull request, then you're going to get better feedback as well. So that's one of the reasons why, taking the time to write a good pull request really helps. And also, another advantage is that if you're able to explain the code that you wrote, then this is a skill that is going to be so useful for you when you have a job interview, because this is very often part of the technical interview as a job where they're going to be like, okay, we're going to give you some time to write some code that does this. And then can you explain to me what this does? And so if you've done pull requests, if you've taken the time to write descriptions and taken feedback seriously, then you're going to be able to do this exercise very naturally in front of an employer, potential employer, and be like, yeah, this is my code. This is why I did this. And they're going to be super happy because they're like, this person really knows what they're doing. You probably don't, because nobody does know what they're doing. That's the truth. But, they'll get this feeling like, wow, they're really confident and they know. So that's what you want to go for, right? I'm joking, but it's half joking. So how do you do a good pull request? Well, as you know, description is a good thing, but you can also, add some screenshots and maybe a quick video in 5-10 seconds of when you click on something, what happens. GIFs can be used one way to do this as well. If you have, if you're using, a third-party library, you can add a link to this library and say, hey, look, this is the library I've used. And so that can be something that is going to be, if somebody wants to know more about your code and why you wrote this code this way, then this is going to be very helpful for them if you provide links and screenshots. And there is here, and maybe I'll share that slide, so that deck, so that you can also get back to it in the channel. But yeah, there's a great PR that TCL-9 did Yeah, you'll be more than welcome to take a look and see, oh, this is what a good example of PR looks like.
We're at 47 right now, Eve.
Yeah, thank you so much for the heads up. And I'm going to go into comments in code, and I'll keep it short. But yeah, so comments in code. Yeah, I guess my new objective is 3:50 p.m. So comments in code. I guess I did really want to focus on documentation. So so comments in code, again, you probably know what it is. Like, in JavaScript, every time you write a line with 2 forward slashes, are they forward slashes or backward slashes? Forward, right? I never know. This one, that one, which one is forward, which one is backward. Anyway, so when you have these 2 slashes, and then you ID, your line becomes this dark green, and that tells you this is a comment. And so right there, comments are an opportunity for you to maybe describe a little bit more your code right there where it's doing this thing, whereas a documentation piece is more, abstracted away from the code, and the PR is about a specific piece of code. Then with comments, then you are really talking about, this is what this right here is doing. And a good way to think about these comments is, a lot of the time it's very tempting when you write a comment to write a comment and say, this is what this is doing. And this is great, but potentially if you wrote good code, your code should explain what it's doing on its own. So there's no need to comment like, oh, this is the code, this is the function that gets the next item, and the name of the function is next item. Well, this is a bit redundant, okay? So if you have a comment that says, this is the code that gets next item, and the name of the function is next item, then this might not be the best idea. However, what you can do is you can explain why. So if you have a function that's called next item, then you can explain in your code straight in there, say, why do you have a function to get the next item? And so this is a good thing. Like when you write a comment, it shouldn't say the what of the code, but it should say the why. And this is a lot of like, if you're writing code and it's kind of like a hacky thing that you're writing, then why did you use this hack? Why did you use this hack? Why did you come up with this solution? And so this is how I think one of the best way to think about comments in the code is just like, okay, explaining, this is really convoluted. There is something weird here going on, and I'm going to explain it to you because this is, there's something here that the code doesn't tell you that I want to tell you in just like in a normal way, which is not the code. So this is kind of why you want to use, and this is definitely, part of this communication between developers, because again, you're writing this code, but somebody else might be working on this function that you just wrote, and so they might not understand why you did this. And so this is why comments can be very, very important too. And so how, again, you have this piece of code right there, and you want to focus on the why. Also a good example in there is that Reach UI repository on GitHub. And I'll link the deck so you can look at it. So yeah, that's the kind of the squeezed version of communication. So that's what I had in mind in there. So yeah, documentation, pull requests, and comments are 3 great tools that you have at your disposal to communicate with your teammates, and also with you from the future or your teammates from the future, and to avoid this, gap in knowledge. Like if you figured out something that nobody else has figured, maybe there's a room somewhere, whether it's in documentation, in a PR, or in a comment, so that the next person that comes after you doesn't have to figure this out another time. And this is where, you can really have a great team dynamic this way, and everybody can be at their best. And this is everything. This is why communication is key. So yeah, that's a.
I totally agree with that. I love this presentation for every reason you mentioned, but I think that for us at Collab Lab specifically, a lot of us come from like different backgrounds, and most of us have had to work in the service industry or in some kind of like customer support role, whether it's like being a server or working for a tool that has a support team. But I feel like it's a like hidden superpower of those of us who come from these different backgrounds to be able to come into a developer team and have those like solid communication skills that, you know, maybe a computer science grad might not have. So when you come in and you can show that you can document things really well, you're showing that you're going to be a great overall like part of the team, like somebody who can help steer the ship and teach your team things they don't know and communicate what you do know and like your approach to things. And that is such a critical skill to have when you're part of a team. So if you can show, you know, people you're interviewing with or teams that you want to be a part of that you care about that, that's going to be such an asset to their team. So do good documentation, try and fit it in wherever you can, and try and just teach through your documentation, whether you're teaching you or your teammates. Thank you for the presentation. So good.
Of course. And you're absolutely true. Like, you know, if you can show that you know how to write good documentation, this is something that can make the difference and make really the big difference between somebody and somebody else at a job interview. It really does. Was there any?
I have a quick question. So yes. Is there like an add-on library or something that you suggest, or like how do we document our code?
Yes, that's a good question. So for the documentation piece, the way that kind of like that standard that existed for maybe 20 or 30 years now. I mean, it's been around for so as long as I've been able to touch a computer. It's the README file. So you probably noticed on the repo, there's a readme.md file. This is going to be the entry point for your teammates or anybody who wants to look at your project. The first thing they're going to look at is going to be the README. And so this is where you can start saying, okay, if you want to install this app, you're going to run this command and that command. If you want to run a development server, you're going to do this. And then, you know, this is the entry point towards how do I add on to this application? And from there, you can have your own way to, you know, there's lots of tools that exist out there that you can use to provide like a very specific like API level documentation as well. And so it could be an external website. So, you know, React Router has a whole website, and this whole website is about React Router and how to use it. And so that's you know, from the README, that entry point, you can say to your user, hey, look, there is a whole website there where you can know everything you need to know about this. Or you can have YouTube videos too, if you want. There's a lot you can do there. So, but maybe somebody else has a different answer to that.
One thing I've been noticing a lot is, you know, it's like if you're working with a library or something, or even just, you know, like whatever your language is, you can command and hover over a function or a variable, and you can click on it and it'll open up the code in in the code base. And it'll often like fits, like I work in Go a lot or Dart. And so like you click on something, there's like huge like volumes of comments in there where they're describing how to do it. So it's like they've got everything directly in their code base, all the comments on how to use a function, why it's there, ways of using it, examples of how to use it. So that's another thing I've seen. I don't know if it's really appropriate for like a project necessarily. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Eve.
Are you talking about like comments in code essentially?
Yeah, so like if I'm like I'm noticing, especially in Dart, it's probably the first place I noticed it, is, you know, it's like if you're working with a function, you want to know something about a function in Dart, you can click on it, and it'll take you to where that is defined in the first place in the code base, and they'll have like a huge, you know, description of what that function does, why it's there, how to use it, you know.
Yeah, I totally see what you're saying. Anytime you're working with like a third-party library, they usually do a brilliant job of including comments in the code. So I think in the presentation we had linked to like Reach UI or something.
Yes.
Because if you're building a library where other people are going to be using your functions, if they're not a part of your internal team at the company you work for, so they have, these users have even less insight to what you're building and why. So they generally don't use anything fancy. They're just putting, comments right in the code so that, like Scott was saying, you can click through to that package in your project and learn more about how that thing works and why it was put in place.
Right.
Good call.
And is that appropriate for a project like this to have that volume of code in something?
I would say that it just depends on what it does and what kind of explanation that it needs. If you think that there's information you have to share that's going to save somebody time if they need to go refactor it or something, then I would say there is no limit to how long the comment should be. It should be as long as it needs to be to convey what you want. And so one thing that you might notice is that you'll put something, you'll be working on a bug and you'll have to come up with something kind of hacky because you tried what you thought you should try and it didn't work. Well, somebody's going to come through and look at it later why didn't they just do it this way? And if you've already tried to do it that way and it didn't work and you had to come up with a workaround, that's something that's really good to document, because not only is it solidifying your understanding of it, but it's saving your teammate time by not having to dig into, why didn't they do it this way, and trying to implement it like that. So I say share as much as you want in a code comment, as long as you think that it's all relevant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's another tool that it could be nice to use called JSDoc, which is obviously JavaScript documentation, as the name implies, and it's a library you can add to your project. And what it does is that it will, every time it will kind of automate the documentation process for you. And so every time you write a function, it's going to kind of understand what are the arguments and the parameters and what it returns, and that's function signature is the word that this is describing here. And so with JSDoc, you can automate part of this documentation and have this, in one place you can have this automated documentation of all your functions and how they work. And if you want, right, like this, you can also add your own details to how this piece of code works as well. So it's just something, if you're interested, you can look into. JSDoc is a great tool as well to use. So yeah.
This is so cool, because when I was in school, I used to use JavaDoc actually, and this is similar. It says that it's modeled after JavaDoc. So
nice.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look into this.
Yeah, what did you say the name was? I didn't catch it.
It's JavaDoc. So it's very similar, but in school I used to code with Java, so that's what we use.
Oh yeah, okay, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, this one is for JavaScript, but here you can see it is modeled after JavaDoc, so this is very similar as of course.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, I guess we're at 4 p.m. now. Was there any questions or comments or anything? All right. Awesome. So yes, documentation really is key, can make a big difference. And, it's also something that you can do for yourself, because, you're going to go back to this project in a month or two and you're going to forget, you had forgotten everything you had done. And so you're going to make yourself a favor. All right, so let's talk about the next issues. And I don't know, maybe you're tired of listening to my voice, so maybe Scott wants to take over.
Yeah, so I think both of these tickets are in Mentor, or actually they're peer review approved, and I put down an approval as well. I don't know if Eve or Stacy wants to take a look at them too. So
okay,
those should probably go over to Mentor review approved.
Okay, so we'll move them here.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
And then what tickets are we on now? So we got 11.
So yeah, it's a 10. Oops, sorry, I shouldn't have moved around so fast. But yeah, 11 and 12 are the two tickets right now.
All right.
So
let's take a look at 11. As a user, I want to be able to delete items from my shopping list so that my list isn't cluttered with items I don't want to buy in the future. Let's see. So our AC is, it's possible our users may make an error when entering an item or decide they don't want to buy a certain item again in the future. let's help them. I don't remember that being there. That's nice. Okay, so the ISC is user is able to delete an item from the shopping list. Before deleting, we're going to prompt the user to confirm that they really do want to delete it, so they don't do it by accident. And the deletion should cause the associated records in the database to be deleted. Anybody have any questions on that? No? Okay, let's move on to number 12. Okay, number 12. As a user, I want to view a list of my shopping list items in order of how soon I am likely to need to buy each of them again, so that it's clear what I need to buy soon. And the AC here. So we're going to have some different item states possible. So need to buy soon, fewer than 7 days. Need to buy kind of soon, between 7 and 30 days. Need to buy not soon, more than 30 days. And inactive. And inactive is when there's only one purchase in the database, or the purchase is really out of date, which means the time that it's the last purchase is twice what the estimate is. I'm not sure if that's a tricky one to wrap my head around verbally. So we can talk about that. So the ACR, items in the list are shown visually distinct. So the different background color is just something to visually set them off from each other. It's like an item that can be bought. Items that are bought that are purchased soon are going to have like a different color or something visually distinct from not soon. And then the items to be sorted by the estimated number of days until next purchase. So all the soons will be together, and not soons, kind of soons all together. And then items with the same number of estimated days until the next purchase should be sorted alphabetically. So if they're all 7 days, Apple's going to come before banana. If that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions about this, or want me to clarify anything? Or try to clarify anything? Does anybody want to jump? Are either of these issues standing out to somebody? Something you want to jump on? First dibs.
I guess the question is like, do we know what the pairs are already?
Oh yeah, I have to look at the Slack again to look those up.
Yeah, it looks like we have Fabrice and Mabel together, and Leah and Leon in another pair.
Yeah.
So yeah, was there any favorites? So essentially, we have a ticket where we want to enable users to delete an item from the list, and the other one is we want to filter the list by how soon they are going to be needed for purchase. And if it's not, if you have a bunch of items that are due very soon, then these items will have to be sorted alphabetically from A to Z, essentially. So any takers for 11?
Let the Rhino assignment start.
Going once, going twice, going thrice, 3 times. So I guess we'll assign it to Fabrice and Mabel then, the deleting an item. All right. And so that means number 12, which is about sorting these items based on how soon they are due for a purchase. This one is going to be for Leon and Leah. All right. Everything is crystal clear? Easy?
That's actually something I kind of wanted to clarify just for myself. I'm going to the shopping or the tickets on my own here. Mm-hmm. So on that number 12, just because it can get a little bit fuzzy between when we're dealing with styling and when we're dealing with just functionality. So items on the list are shown as visually distinct according to how soon they're expected to be bought again. Are we actually supposed to be looking at styling here, or like a stand-in styling? Like how? I
think it's fair to just like visually represent the duration by rendering the actual name. You know, soon, not soon, or whatever, like next to the items. If you want to take it a step further and put some like colors or something in place, that's fine too. But again, like in the last couple of weeks, we'll be doing some styling. So I probably just write like, or X days until it should be purchased again, or, you know, soon, not soon, whatever.
Great.
Good question. Of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. This is great. Amazing work. I won't be able to review any of the existing PRs until these kids go to bed. But if Eve can review them, give them the final go, we can get them merged and we can move on to next week. Mm-hmm. I too, like Eve, am super passionate about communication as a developer. So if any of you want anything you've written to be reviewed, any comments, any PRs, we're totally here for you. Just shoot them over to us. We're happy to give feedback on that. And keep up the great work. That's all I have.
Yeah. You're doing great, and so yeah, don't hesitate. It's kind of interesting. It looks like every week there might be like a mentor that's more like working a little bit more than the others. And since like last week was Scott, so maybe this week it's Stacy. Who knows? But yeah, don't hesitate.
That's just like the most beautiful thing about a team is like you don't always have to be on.
If you have a solid team, you know, we're all here for each other. It's like a give and take and it ebbs and flows. So it's like I've loved working with you all. It's been brilliant. I think that we all pull in when we need to, and it's worked out really well.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Yeah, we'll get these reviews done, and yeah, don't hesitate. Let's be chatty.
Yeah, and let us know once you're merging if you have any issues with merging, and we can jump in and help with that too. Should be pretty simple on this one.
Alrighty. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye, team.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.